If the Minnesota Vikings really wanted Aaron Rodgers, would they already have made the call? Because this isn't just about adding a veteran quarterback. It's about the direction of an entire franchise. And according to one league insider, Minnesota's thinking might be very different from what fans expect. When injuries pile up and production dips, speculation is inevitable. J.J. McCarthy's 2025 season was defined by setbacks. 3 separate injuries disrupted any rhythm he was trying to build. A high ankle sprain, concussion-like symptoms, hairline fractures. For a young quarterback still establishing himself, that's more than just bad luck. It changes timelines. McCarthy managed to appear in 10 games. He completed 140 of 243 passes for 1,632 yards, throwing 11 touchdowns against 12 interceptions. Those numbers don't reflect growth. They reflect inconsistency. And when a former first-round quarterback struggles while also battling durability concerns, questions surface quickly. That's where Aaron Rodgers entered the conversation. On the Rich Eisen show, NFL insider Tom Pelissero addressed the possibility directly. His takeaway was clear. The Vikings' goal is not to hand the job to a superstar veteran. It's to create genuine competition at quarterback. Pelissero explained that bringing in Rodgers would complicate that idea. If you sign a 4-time MVP like Rodgers and the season starts slowly, you're not benching him. Not realistically. Not politically. Not in a locker room that understands his resume. That's the difference. According to Pelissero, Minnesota wants an open competition, a real one. He suggested that a scenario featuring Rodgers and McCarthy wouldn't feel like competition. It would feel predetermined. And that's a critical distinction. The Vikings believed in creating competition last year as well. The intention, as Pelissero described it, was to put McCarthy in an environment where he had to earn it. But circumstances interfered. Injuries reshaped the plan. The front office isn't backing away from that philosophy. If anything, they're doubling down on it. Pelissero even drew a comparison involving Kirk Cousins. His point wasn't about Cousins specifically. It was about perception. When a veteran with strong fan support enters the room, competition becomes emotionally charged. Thousands of fans wearing number 8 jerseys changes the atmosphere before a snap is even taken. Rodgers would amplify that dynamic even more. So instead of targeting a headline-grabbing name, the Vikings may prefer someone who can compete fairly while still preserving flexibility. Pelissero mentioned Kyler Murray and Geno Smith as examples of veterans who make more sense in that framework. Murray brings starting experience and playmaking ability. He hasn't operated in Kevin O'Connell's offense, but his resume shows he can command a locker room and create outside structure. Smith represents another profile entirely. A steady presence, experienced but not immovable. Someone who could compete without overshadowing the developmental plan. Those names aren't confirmations. They're illustrations of a type. The type matters. Minnesota's leadership has publicly acknowledged the need for baseline quarterback play. Executive Vice President of Football Operations Rob Brzezinski emphasized that the team must evaluate all realistic and financially responsible options. That statement carries weight. It signals urgency without desperation. It suggests that the Vikings recognize McCarthy's struggles, but they aren't abandoning him. Pelissero reinforced that sentiment. He stated clearly that the organization still believes in McCarthy. The idea last year was to have him in a competitive situation. It simply didn't unfold as expected due to injuries beyond their control. That belief remains intact. McCarthy, by reports, has bounced back physically and plans to train alongside Justin Jefferson. That detail may seem minor, but it reflects intent. Chemistry matters. Timing matters. For a quarterback fighting perception, off-season work sends a message internally. Still, belief alone doesn't solve durability concerns. Hall of Famer Jared Allen voiced a straightforward point. Availability defines starters. If a quarterback cannot stay healthy, long-term planning becomes fragile. Allen's perspective doesn't attack McCarthy's talent. It questions sustainability. And sustainability is the entire debate. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers' own future remains uncertain. There is no clarity on a 2026 return. Reports indicate that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in talks with him. General Manager Omar Khan acknowledged that working with Rodgers was a good experience and left the door open. That matters for context. If Rodgers lands elsewhere, the Vikings' decision becomes easier. If he remains available, the speculation intensifies. But here's the underlying theme. Minnesota appears more focused on structure than star power. Kevin O'Connell's offense requires timing, rhythm, and command. It thrives when quarterbacks process quickly and distribute efficiently. Plugging in a future Hall of Famer sounds attractive. Yet it also shifts control, expectations, and long-term alignment. You cannot quietly evaluate a young quarterback while Rodgers is in the building. Every incompletion would spark debate. Every interception would fuel comparisons. Development under that spotlight becomes complicated. That may be why Pelissero believes Rodgers is unlikely. This isn't about talent evaluation. It's about organizational clarity. The Vikings drafted McCarthy with a plan. Injuries delayed that timeline. His 2025 statistics did not strengthen his case. 11 touchdowns against 12 interceptions do not inspire security. But abandoning a developmental plan after adversity carries its own risk. There's also financial discipline to consider. Brzezinski's comment about evaluating financially responsible options suggests the Vikings won't chase prestige at any cost. That tone feels deliberate. They want competence. They want competition. They want flexibility. Those three goals rarely align with signing a quarterback whose presence guarantees immediate starting expectations. Even the Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones references illustrate philosophy. Minnesota explored veteran insurance previously. They understood that a young quarterback benefits from internal pressure. They just didn't anticipate the injury cascade that reshaped everything. Now they're revisiting the concept. But this time, with sharper awareness of what went wrong. McCarthy's 10-game sample wasn't catastrophic. It was uneven. His completion percentage hovered below ideal territory. His yardage totals reflected a conservative approach. His touchdown-to-interception ratio raised concerns about decision-making under pressure. Yet 10 games during a season riddled with physical setbacks doesn't define a career. It creates ambiguity. Ambiguity is uncomfortable for front offices. It forces layered decisions. Do you protect the young quarterback's confidence? Or do you raise the bar immediately? Pelissero's interpretation suggests Minnesota wants both. They want McCarthy to feel the competition. They also want him to win it. That balance requires careful roster construction. Signing Rodgers would tilt the scales dramatically. Even if labeled a competition, the optics would feel decisive. Coaches say the best player will start. But in reality, reputation influences opportunity. That's human nature inside any locker room. It's also why the Vikings appear cautious. The conversation isn't about replacing McCarthy outright. It's about determining whether he can deliver reliable, baseline quarterback play. Brzezinski's phrasing emphasized that baseline level as essential for team effectiveness. Baseline doesn't mean elite. It means stable. And stability has been elusive. High ankle sprains affect mobility. Concussion-like symptoms raise longer-term durability questions. Hairline fractures disrupt preparation. Each injury individually is manageable. Collectively, they create uncertainty. Jared Allen's perspective reflects what many former players understand. Talent cannot overcome repeated absence. Consistency requires physical resilience. That's the part statistics cannot capture. So, where does that leave Minnesota? It leaves them evaluating every angle. Health reports, film breakdowns, financial implications, locker room psychology. Rodgers represents certainty in performance, at least historically. But he also represents certainty in role. McCarthy represents potential, but potential remains theoretical until translated across a full season. The Vikings are balancing timelines. Short-term, they need competence. Long-term, they need clarity. If they sign a mid-tier veteran capable of competing without dominating headlines, they preserve evaluation space. If McCarthy thrives, the plan accelerates. If he falters, the fallback exists. That scenario aligns with Pelissero's reporting. It also aligns with measured franchise building. Fans often equate aggression with ambition. Sometimes patience reflects greater ambition. The Vikings appear unwilling to rush toward a splash simply because the market allows it. They understand that quarterback decisions echo for years. Rodgers may still command respect league-wide. His resume speaks for itself, but Minnesota's path seems less about legacy and more about structure. Kevin O'Connell's system requires buy-in. It requires synchronization with receivers like Justin Jefferson. It requires trust from ownership. McCarthy training with Jefferson signals effort toward that synchronization. It doesn't erase interceptions. It doesn't erase injuries. But it shows commitment. That matters internally. And internally is where this decision will be defined. Speculation will continue. Rodgers' name generates conversation. Reports about Pittsburgh add layers. Every rumor fuels debate about whether Minnesota should pivot aggressively. But according to Pelissero's interpretation, the Vikings are not seeking a savior. They're seeking equilibrium. Equilibrium between belief and accountability. Equilibrium between development and results. Equilibrium between patience and urgency. That's a more nuanced strategy than headlines often suggest. If McCarthy proves durable and sharp in camp, the narrative shifts quickly. If he struggles, the safety net becomes essential. That's why the identity of the potential veteran matters so much. Not too big to overshadow. Not too small to lack credibility. A competitor, not a coronation. Minnesota's front office understands optics. They understand fan expectations. They understand that quarterback controversy can fracture locker rooms if mishandled. They also understand that ignoring performance issues would be irresponsible. The middle ground is intentional competition. Pelissero believes that remains the guiding principle. The Vikings still have McCarthy's back. That phrase resonates. It doesn't guarantee a starting job. It guarantees opportunity. Opportunity must be earned. The coming months will reveal whether McCarthy can translate belief into consistency. Training with Jefferson is a positive sign. Health updates will matter. Preseason performance will matter. But philosophy shapes decisions long before kickoff. And right now, the philosophy appears steady. No panic. No overcorrection. No dramatic pivot toward a future Hall of Famer simply for reassurance. Instead, a calculated approach built around competition and evaluation. It may not generate immediate headlines. It may frustrate fans who crave certainty. Yet, in many ways, it reflects disciplined roster management. The Vikings know what they need. Baseline quarterback play. Durability. Command. If McCarthy delivers that, the organization's patience will look wise. If he cannot, the competition will reveal it without forcing a dramatic reset. That's the difference between reaction and strategy. So as Aaron Rodgers' future remains unclear and external speculation grows louder, Minnesota's stance appears grounded. They are not chasing star power. They are building an environment where their young quarterback must prove he belongs. And that might be the clearest message of all. As this situation unfolds, one question lingers for Vikings fans. Is true competition the best way to develop J.J. McCarthy, or does bringing in a strong veteran risk stalling his growth before it fully begins?